Hi everyone. In the situation that I'm going to be talking about, I will be talking to an adolescent. She's around the age of 13, and she's been recently taken away from her home due to things such as domestic violence, drug abuse in the home, um, violence in general, gangs, and really human trafficking in the small community that she lived in. This girl has come to me in this situation. She's having nightmares, she's having other symptoms of PTSD. She's also having some pretty severe behavior issues. She's feeling like she's also not able to remember major portions in her life. Even back from age 11 and back. And she's just really not feeling comfortable in her own new home environment. She's lived with her aunt and uncle for about 6 months. She's really kind of having difficulty integrating in to this normal lifestyle that, many of us do, are fortunate enough to have, but, she's learning to cope. And trying to figure out where she fits in. She's also really, I want to work with her on the complexities of her abuse. And she's really having guilt for not only being a victim, but really kind of being an active participant at some points in the abuse of others and being, a watchful eye on human trafficking and things like that. So that's where I'm at. Hi, Alice. I know we've only been recently met, but I've been looking at your chart, and of course, I really kind of spoke with you regarding some of the issues that you've had, and I just really kind of want to talk to you about what trauma really is, if that's okay with you. Um, First of all, I really wanted to commend you on being really just such a trooper and, wanting to come in and talk to me last week and expressing some of your concerns and, really frustrations that have occurred since moving in with your aunt and uncle and, just kind of being in a new environment. Um, as you've said, you were in a home environment for the first 13 years that was chaotic, it was messy, and frankly, as you described it many times last week, it was terrifying at times. So I just really want to kind of talk about trauma and what it really does to the body, um, what it does to the mind, and how people react. So there's really two types of trauma. There's acute and chronic. Acute is like the type where something happens. It's one specific instance. So it would be like you're in a really bad car accident, or if it was someone who was in the bottom floor of 9/11 and had to experience that. Chronic, on the other hand, is something that occurs for a long period of time. So it would be something like if there was a husband and wife and the husband physically abuses the wife on a daily basis for years. So it happens over and over and over again. Unfortunately, you have experienced both. So because of that, your body has really, and brain has really rewired um, what you feel is normal just in order to keep yourself safe. So when a person experiences trauma, your brain's going to attempt to take care of the body and mind in any way possible. Because really, as you know, our goal is, the human goal is, the most basic goal is to stay alive. We're both sitting here, we're both talking, breathing, our heart's beating, we're moving our hands. As you can see, I always move my hands. Because we're obviously still alive, which is a great thing. Um, but the problem with trauma is, as people, we have emotions, we have fears, and when we experience trauma, our brain doesn't have the ability to keep us alive and doing everything we need to do, as well as make sure everything else is working correctly. It's like if you have, you know, 5 balls in your hand, or 4 balls in your hand. You have 2 in each hand. So, on one hand, you can take care of this and you can take care of that. But what happens if 15 more balls fall from the sky? You're not able to hold them all. So you are going to have to choose which 4, 5, or 6 you can handle. And that's kind of what the brain does, is it decides what it needs to keep its most basic form, which is to keep us alive. Um, so, and it's still, our brain also wants to allow us to think and analyze things in trauma because it, really occurs quickly. So on a very basic level, our brain has like 2 types of situation. We have this higher processing brain, which is like, think of a surgeon. They can sit and they can analyze a problem, and they can say, look at pictures. If it's a heart surgeon, they can look at pictures and say, oh, there's this wrong with the heart. I could do this, I could do that. I could do this type of surgery, or I could do radiation, and they can talk to their colleagues and really kind of get a big picture. And then there's this basic part of your brain, which is more like an animal. So think of it as, a zebra. So when trauma occurs and a person's, in a situation, a lot of times that animal brain really kind of takes over because you have to think fast, do something drastic just to keep you alive, right? So obviously we end up using this more animal brain because it's faster. You can just think on your feet. So think of a zebra. You're out grazing. If you're a zebra, you're out grazing and you are just, everything seems fine. And all of a sudden, out of the corner of your eye, you see a lion who is about to pounce. Well, obviously, you're not going to sit there and think of a zebra's not going to sit there and think of the pros and cons of going left or right, or, what's going to happen if the lion comes and gets you versus if you zig this way and zag that way type of thing. A zebra is just going to bolt as fast as they can go, and they're not going to weigh the pros and cons. They're just going to run. And this is called fight or flight. And this type of mindset, it just switches on like a switch. Our brain makes chemicals in the body to make things happen so that you could run faster, things like that. Our heart rate goes up, and we have this thing called adrenaline. So you've seen adrenaline. If you're like ready for the big game, you get really excited, everyone gets super pumped up. But in trauma, this happens, but it's, not necessarily a positive thing. Well, for a zebra, it's okay for this to happen. It goes and it happens quickly, and then the zebra goes and grazes or figures out where he's going to sleep that night. But for a person like you or me, you realize you just almost got eaten, and your brain's filling up with all of these emotions of like terror and frustration that you want to work through. But this trauma kind of puts you in a situation that it kind of comes in and it just changes all your wires, because it wants you to make these like fight or flight decisions, like I said, quick decisions to fix your situation. But from a human perspective, you also want to, think about your emotions and, have those types of feelings. So when trauma occurs, whether it's, acute or chronic, like I said, you have this fight or flight response. So in your situation, you were put in an environment that you had to do this every day. This isn't like you walked down the street and, you almost got hit by a bus. This was your morning, noon, and night. So unlike most people where their day consists of, in the morning like mine, whether you're going to put cream and sugar in your coffee, you have to make quick decisions to stay alive and to stay as safe as you could possibly be. And each thing that you do during the day or, throughout your life, it's kind of like a little piece of information that gets put into your brain, and you store it in there. Because I know that I've had sugar in my coffee before and I didn't like it. the decision sooner or later becomes second nature. Of course I don't want sugar. I don't like it, so I'm just gonna only put cream in it. Same things happens with trauma. After a situation occurs, your brain remembers what happens, so it tries to figure out kind of its own way, so that if it ever happens again, it's going to store this in your brain. If it ever happens again, you're going to be able to respond quicker, respond better. You're going to be able to do it. So, and after each occurrence, like whether it's one or many, your brain stores this memory of how to do this. It might not be the best way to fix the situation. It might be harmful. It might have been dangerous. But your brain knows it worked the last time. So why not do it that way again? And it kept you alive and the most safe that you could have been at that situation. You couldn't, do anything else. So then, like me realizing I don't like sugar in my coffee, it also becomes second nature. So the brain is so smart then that almost too smart at times, it kind of starts doing crazy things. Like it knows that, remembering that time when you were a time when someone was physically or sexually abused, that it makes the person feel sick to the stomach and that it makes them have headaches. So sometimes it makes you forget or gives you nightmares like you've had, or makes you feel angry just for no reason, because it's trying to keep your body safe, because that's the main goal, stay alive. So if you forget something, it's kind of like it's stored back in the massive, blank space that's all in there. Gets tucked away. So like think of a bracelet. You have this bracelet, it falls onto your bed, gets stuck behind a pair of shoes and a magazine. It's still there in case you need it, but you forgot that you had it, or you can't seem to find it. So everything kind of gets a little jumbled. So then, because your body, like our body and brain really wants to stay alive, your brain decides to put that like surgeon hat on and say, this is what we need to remember. This is what we need to forget. Oh, and then we'll get angry when something like this happens, because it'll help us to stay focused in a scary situation again. And the surgeon cuts things here, moves things there until it makes the brain be able to kind of work in a trauma situation. Problem is, not everything in life is trauma. Making coffee is not trauma. Going to class is not trauma. So we tend to react in ways that are odd or different, and you feel differently or act in a different way, or, just feel, have pent-up anger or something like that. And you feel differently than most people do during daily life, and you kind of get disconnected from the world and other people. So that impact of everything that you do, whether it was because of this single trauma or, like you've had both the single traumas and this full life trauma, you kind of just don't feel the same as other people do. So that's kind of, when you feel totally different, you can kind of really feel isolated, alone. So that's what I'm here for you. I'm here to help you make different connections, help you work through the past trauma, and really get you on your path to really feeling like you want to feel. So that's kind of where we're at. And I hope I hope that you understood. If you have any questions or concerns, questions about trauma, you can obviously ask me now.